When he played bridge, he was pleasant.
Yes.
Without hardship.
Pleasant. Easy, without hardship is the first one. Let's stay with pleasant. What pleases, right? Pleases is different from making happy. The idea that it's pleasure, it's the pleasure-pain cycle, the pleasure-pain scale.
Yeah, he had the pleasure when he was at his job.
That's right. It makes you feel good, it makes you feel bad, right?
Like the power that came within his job.
Right, that makes him feel good. Yeah. Yeah. So pleasure can come in many different ways. It can come, but basically pleasure is enough stimulation to make you feel something, but not enough stimulation to make you feel too much. Right? That's pleasure. Pleasure and pain is a matter of stimulation. So when he's playing bridge, what's happening? He's intellectually stimulated. He's intellectually stimulated enough so that he feels only, he feels only,
his pleasure, his own.
Yeah, he feels a little more alert than he would otherwise. And that's good. That's pleasant. When he socializes with certain people, he's stimulated just enough so that it's interesting. Not enough so that it's a problem, right? And how much do you need to be stimulated for it to be a problem? Well, it has to disrupt decency, right? So you can't get stimulated so much that it becomes an obsession or something. So pleasure is just a kind of comfortable amount of stimulation. Pain is overstimulation, right? One kind or another. So he likes a life where there's decency, pleasure, tea, nice things on the wall, interesting conversation. Just enough stimulation so that you can handle it. Predictable stimulation. Yeah?
One thing I said, I read it, I think in the book, when you see him the most happiest,
Yeah.
the happiest time, part of stimulation, when he was decorating.
He's full of joy when he's decorating.
I mean, I think that's part of, I said to my wife, he should have been an interior decorator, but it's full of joy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can get the meaning of life, but.
No, it's interesting.
It's full of joy because everybody else would see it.
Well,
Yeah.
but that was like, wow, he was so alive.
That's right. Now that's fascinating.
That wasn't pleasant, that was, maybe it was pleasant, but it was up the highest.
Yeah, that tells you, well, it's very important because that's, of course, what kills him.
What? I'm sorry?
The decorating.
Oh, the knock.
Right.
The knock.
Right, yeah.
And David's observation.
A broken rib that injured him.
That's right. Exactly.
Right, but back then they didn't.
Exactly. Now, David's point is very well taken. When do we see?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Listen to Professor Theoharris. Right? Saying something.
When do we see Ivan feeling that life is really worth it? When he's fixing up his house. More so than any other time. It's great to be a judge because it gives him power over other people's lives, and he likes that. And he's very happy when he gets his promotions and when he arranges. Having been in the countryside, he goes to Petersburg and he finagles that and gets the promotion.
For a while with him and the wife, they were arguing.
That's right.
He wasn't happy with the money.
So he goes and gets more.
He goes and gets more. He gets a job with a higher money.
That's right. 5,000, remember.
When he was picking up the house and fixing it up, he was doing it for her and the daughter, not so much for him.
No.
No, well, that might have been the story he was telling.
No. He was
Well, that's
happy.
why I
Not
got
what his heart was.
What does the text say?
I
Whenever we have this is, see, when you're reading, this is also very instructive. Some things you need to interpret,
right.
meaning read between the lines, right? And some things are explicit. Some things the text says. Now, the text says why he's decorating the way he's decorating. Because everyone else, the people he wants to be accepted by, do it this way. And he's thrilled by two things. First, decorum, right. He's thrilled by the fact that he can enact decorum the way all the people in his class do. A. B. That it's cheaper. than it was for them. He can go to the antique stores and pay less to make his house look more expensive. And this is a point worth making here. Just now, Cheryl, for 1 second. The point about class. No, please. This is for all of you to talk. I just want to make this point quickly, and then we'll come to you, and then I'll come back to it. Where these people are on the level of social prestige is significant in the story. Remember, the author of this story, Count Leo Tolstoy, is an aristocrat. He's wealthy. Wealthy means you don't have to do anything at all, and there's always more money. If you have to do anything for money, you are not wealthy. You can be earning $5 million a month, and you're not wealthy because you have to work. So, Tolstoy's wealthy. He doesn't work. Anybody who works is not wealthy. Now that still holds everywhere in the world except the United States. We have a different social structure. But in Russia, if you work, you're across a great divide. In England, if you work, you're across a great, you're in trade, right? So first there's that issue. And secondly, there's the particular class that Ivan Ilyich belongs to. He belongs to what we would call the professional middle class. They are, I'd say, third down on the wealth tier from the wealthy. And what's their style and their taste? Pretend we're rich. They're poseurs. Posers. Pretend we're rich. Let's look as if we have more money than we do. What can we do to make it look like we're rich? That's Ivan Ilyich's style. And he's overjoyed that he can make his house look like it's in Greenwich when it isn't. He can make his house look like it's in Greenwich when it is in Shelton.
You could have said Mystic.
Or what? I mean, I don't know Connecticut that well, but I do know Shelton.
That was very accurate.
That was very
I think that I would say that's about right. Yeah. So now let's get back to your
That's
point.
exactly, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
Exactly what I was going to say. He was decorating his house. He was trying so hard to make it look a certain way. But in the end, they said it looked like every other house that was trying to look rich.
And that was, of course, the idea. And that's why he feels he's a big success, because he's made it look like everybody
He
else.
felt happy about it.
Yeah. And not because, and interestingly enough, not because he thinks it's beautiful. Beauty is not the point. The social message is the point.
Right.
Yes, Mike.
Something that I thought was kind of connected to that, I just found it, was when he was contemplating about getting married when he first had
Yes.
his wife. And really, why should I marry? Why? No, that's how I read it at first, but as I reread it, it's really, why shouldn't I marry? And he was listing all these things. She's good enough. She's good enough.
Right.
But it was all just to attain that social status.
Exactly.
Because it says, so even Ilyich got married. And it says, then it goes, I mean, that's the way
That's a killer line, isn't
the
it?
story is,
Yeah.
it's almost with, I forgot the word I'm going to use.
Irony is the word you want?
What's the word? You know the word I'm going to use.
Paradox?
Almost a paradox, but just...
It's a kind of deadpan sarcasm.
Yeah, sarcasm.
Yeah.
Sarcasm, or there's another acronym for sarcasm.
Irony, are you thinking of?
If I think of it a lot.
Okay.
Facetious?
Yeah, almost. But
So Ivan Ilyich got married. I mean, it's just, you can hear W.C. Fields saying it, you know?
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Society wants
so
it.
monotone almost, you know?
Yeah.
But from the first, he goes on saying that he were very pleasant until his wife became pregnant. He thought it would be easy, agreeable, gay, and always decorous, decorous character
Yeah.
in his life, approved of by society and regarded by himself as natural, but would even improve it. But from the first months of his wife's pregnancy, something new, unpleasant, depressing, and unseemly and from which there was no way of escape unexpectedly showed itself. So he's going from one extreme
Exactly.
to the other, all just searching for the social status.
Yeah.
He's starting off on the wrong foot, and then
Yeah. I'm very glad you mentioned all those things. I'm especially happy that you talked about the tone of voice, because it is something we haven't talked about in the story. There is a lot of flat, monotone, sarcastic dismissal of this guy.
or the smoking of the cigarettes.
Yeah.
That
There's a lot of contempt that expressed in the story for the vanity and the shallowness of this guy's aspirations, which he thinks, of course, are the best you could have. All right. So he gets the house and all of that. He decorates it. He gets sick. And what's the progress of the illness in terms of the plot of the story? We can just take a step back and not talk about it as a story, because we've talked a lot about the ideas in the story. It is actually a story too, right? And a story always has a similar structure, right? There's a change in the life of somebody in the story, which comes about because of something the person is trying to accomplish, right? The person has a project. He or she pursues the project. In the course of pursuing the project, something happens which isn't supposed to happen, right? They get a surprise ending, and that's the story. It's the change of fortune. You know, you're going to Mystic and you end up in Erie, Pennsylvania. And that's the story. How did that happen, right? So there's a shift. Aristotle calls it a change of fortune, a change of outcome, a change of circumstances. You take on some project which you're trying to control a set of changes, and the project has a life of its own which lands you somewhere you didn't plan to be. That's the structure of every story. So the beginning and middle and end of the story of Ivan Ilyich. The beginning of the story of Ivan Ilyich, the story starts when? What's the beginning of the story? Is it the beginning of the disease? Is it the buying the house? It's not his birth. It's not his marriage.
It's his career, isn't it?
No, it's the beginning of the stories of his death by his colleagues.
Oh, great.
Yes, that's where the work begins. But where does the change of fortune begin? See, this is an interesting thing, right? What's the actual story here?
Cynical is the word I was looking for.
Cynical, very good. Is the story... See, Tolstoy doesn't start, he was born, and then go in sequence. So you can have a lot of events in the story, but where's the actual story here? I would say the story here, what happens to Ivan Ilyich, right? What happens to him? He figures out he's going to die. That's the story. So when does that start? That's the beginning of the story, when he gets sick. This story starts when he realizes that he's sick. It ends, that's right. When he realizes that he actually has to deal with it, that's the beginning of the story. The end of the story is when he's dealt with it. The turning point of the story is when he figures out how to deal with it. So that's the story, right? Beginning, middle, and end. This is a story about a man who actually faces his death, who tries to understand it, who tries to understand what it tells him about his own life, who tries to take death seriously morally, right? Which is what Socrates told him to do, which is what Jesus told him to do, which is what Buddha told him to do, which is what Confucius told him to do. There's a great poem by E.E. Cummings. Socrates told him he wouldn't believe it. Buddha told him he wouldn't believe it. Jesus told him he wouldn't believe it. It took a nipponized piece of the 3rd Avenue L in the head to make him believe it. Great poem. The Second World War, nipponized piece of the 3rd Avenue L. Nips are Japanese, slang for Japanese in the Second World War. Extraordinarily derogatory then, unheard of now. Nobody really uses the term. Nobody calls Japanese nips. But the nips was slang for the Japanese in the Second World War. So a nipponized piece of the 3rd Avenue L, it took a piece of metal that had been made